Great. Welcome everyone once again. Thank you so much for joining in. We have a very esteemed personality amongst us today, Mr. Munish Jauhar. Many of you know him already. Doesn't really need an introduction, but I'll do it for the formality. So he's the founder and CEO of Graycell Technologies, also one of the founding members of our Chandigarh Angels Network. He's the most recent Thai Chandigarh president, and an active global shaper that we know. And most importantly, he's an angel investor with 30 plus startups under his belt. One of the most experienced angel investors that I know. Um, on the nationwide scale, I'd say I wouldn't really want to put him on Chandigarh scale. Chandigarh is too small of a sky for him. I really want to mark him on a nationwide scale. So thank you so much, Munish sir, for accepting the invitation and showing up on Startup Masterclass. I'm really privileged to have you today.
Thanks, Vineet, for having me over, and you're very kind and generous with your words. I'm happy being on Chandigarh scale. Chandigarh is large enough itself. In India is a huge market, lots of angels out there. But thank you for the moment.
So love your humility. Um, Excellent. So because it's the time to start, I guess. Um, just a moment. I don't know. There is some echo. I feel there is some echo.
I guess a couple of people still need to mute out.
Oh, I don't see anybody who's muted at all.
Maybe you can do a mute all.
Everyone is on mute actually. Let me. One person is not. Yep, I found who was responsible for this. Nevertheless, yeah, we still have a lot of time to go. I'll just start straight away with my first question, sir, and that is about your thesis. So, what are top three things that you, as an angel investor, look for before signing a check?
Vineet, there's a lot of echo actually.
Okay, let me just try and make a request to everybody. Kindly keep yourselves on mute, guys, throughout this conversation. Thank you so much for complying. And should you have any questions, just put in the comment box. We're gonna take as many as possible. I'll just give you the privilege of a presenter. Yep, guys, just trying to fix this noise thing. Let me see. It doesn't happen in the previous session. It didn't never happen in the previous sessions. Nevertheless, um, is it fine now?
Yeah, you're fine actually. It's just the echo when you start. Chalo, let's try again.
Okay, great. So yeah, the first question goes like this: that we would like to know your investment thesis. What exactly do you look for before writing a check? It's as simple as that.
So the answer might not be a little simple. Initially, when I start, so I've been investing now for almost 7 to 8 years. Initially, when I started out coming from a technology background, quite a few of my initial investments were centered around technology, basically, right?
Yeah.
And so what happens is initially a lot of that is learning as well. You kind of learn and move on. But over the years, now I would say I do obviously look for team to begin with. What is the team like and what are they all about? And I also look at the idea now to a certain extent. What is the value differentiator? A lot of times there are you could have great ideas, but the team might not be able to execute them. So obviously look at the team's background. Where are they coming from? How did they kind of arrive upon this idea? But nowadays, if I look at my own portfolio, it's very diverse. I mean, There's a lot of diversity. I've obviously still invested in deep tech companies, but I've also kind of gone more broader. What we hear of the real Bharat, so to speak. Companies like that have gone in deeper. Companies like DealShare, Mall 91. So a lot of those kind of companies as well. The idea still has to resonate with me to begin with, and obviously the team is a very, very important factor for me.
Excellent. Any one or two more points that you want to add, like any checklist that you might have, like three things. One is team, I heard.
So obviously, yes, team is number one. The idea is number two. The idea also sometimes, a lot of times, I might look at simpler companies. A lot of times people kind of come have been working somewhere or doing something, and they identify problems inside. Those are real problems.
Yeah.
You look at people working in large companies, and then they say, "Oh, this is a problem," and this is a real use case basically. So obviously, team idea matters a lot. I also look at in the team also there are a lot of sub checklists, so to speak. It's the team's commitment. A lot of times, founders, who are also committed themselves towards the idea in terms of finances, not only kind of running it, but they have also put in their own money where their mouth is, so to speak. So that's very, very important to
Skin
me
in
as
the
well.
game as we speak.
Sorry.
Skin in the game as we speak.
Yes, so skin in the game is important, and I've met quite a few founders nowadays who really go. It's dangerous, but it's heartening to see. Also, they go all the way. That gives you a lot of at least conviction that you are in as an investor, you are in safe hands, so to speak. Whosoever is kind of behind that company, they are willing to go the entire distance.
Got it. Excellent. Now, for early stage startups, when there are no adequate numbers to support, what they're saying and what they're speaking, what is it that they should rather focus on, in order to get in touch with an angel investor and to get that enough of a confidence that they can reach out to an angel investor when they don't have numbers to prove that they are doing something significant.
So, numbers obviously matter to a certain extent, but this is the question also might be very domain specific. You might have certain companies who are, for example, kind of innovating on a product, and just by looking at the product, you can tell this is a huge market. Maybe I'll take an example. There's a company that I kind of invested in called Clensta. So they make this waterless soap. This is pure coincidence that the idea and the company came to me around 2 years back, and I was in Leh then. And it took me like 5 minutes reading the team, the R&D, and then bang, this is a huge problem. In Leh, the army is there, and speaking to people, you realize they're not able to have a bath. And this company is making a waterless soap. So bang, it hits you. There is zero traction right now. They were simply still in R&D stage, so to speak. But then you realize that the market potential for something like this is huge. Your own army is your biggest client to begin with. So a lot of times you end up like this. There's another company that I did just a couple of months back, and a company called Airmeet. And at that point, COVID had not started. This was sometimes you're just lucky. And COVID had not started, and I was just looking. Oh, this is a deep tech. This is an interesting concept. Virtual conferences. This may be the future. Thanks to COVID, the future came 2-3 years early. So it's a good mix. I still go back to your first question. It's a team and idea. So because the team behind the idea also. So a lot of times, what I do go and do is a lot of companies have Facebook pages, Twitter pages, social media out. I do go and read. I start reading what people have to say about whatever little traction, because at early stage, at least the people who are using your products are going to be very vocal about it. Either ways, either they're going to love you or they're going to hate you. So to me, that feedback is far more important. Basics, even Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter. Sometimes I might have friends who have used that product service. I might just kind of reach out to them and check in with them. And so That's the thing, basically.
Excellent. And one of the things that could be a point of difference between investor and the prospective startups in which you are willing to invest is valuation. Couple of times we get into the discussions that talk about your value proposition over valuation. Don't be too pushy about your valuation, so on and so forth. What's your take on this? Should startups be really protective of their dilution, which is directly linked to the valuation at the early stages, if at all they're getting some investors to back them? Or what is it that they should be willing to?
I believe startups need to be very, very careful about how much they end up diluting, especially during the early stages. This is a stage where you might end up kind of losing control of your entire company, so to speak. Especially now, you see, the thing is, a lot of times at early stage, it's like a hand to mouth kind of existence. You are strapped, you're looking for money. Somebody might come up and say, "Oh, take this X amount, but I'm going to take so much of you." Now, this is actually a losing. This is my personal opinion. So, please, I feel this is a losing proposition both for the investor also and the startup as well. Now, you have to look at it like this: if the startup tomorrow starts growing, and some big fund or VC comes in later on, and they realize, you know what, the startup is already, they do not have more than, let's say, 40% of the company. It's already gone to somebody else. That's going to be a tricky stage. And that 40% guy does not want to sell. Then who's going to invest in the company,
Yeah.
right? This is something which has to be mutually balanced between both parties. Especially when it comes to, it is something that has to be fair to both parties. The startup also has to understand the investor is putting in money, but the valuation has to be decided very carefully, and it has to be kind of agreed and has to be fair to everybody involved. Because, like I said, if you end, very hypothetically speaking, let's say somebody gives you very early pre-stage money and you end up giving 10-15% of your company. At seed stage, you will lose another 10-15%. At angel stage, another 18%, 18 to, and this is all domain varies in terms of domains. Somewhere it might be 18, somewhere it might be 27%, but that 10% margin is there. Now imagine you've got to angel stage and you're already 50% out. Who would come in at Series A, Series B stage and put in money in the company when the founder himself is not in kind of control of the company? So it's something you have to kind of carefully work upon. Has to be fair to all parties. It's never easy coming to that decision. What I'm just saying words makes it sound really simplistic. There is some, something you have to sit down and think through. But at the end, the call remains with the founder. They have to take that call. Sometimes survival is also very important, and so that's their call. But even the investor has to realize. Even if they end up taking a lot of the company, they're not going to benefit from it, especially if they're not going to drive that company. And tomorrow, if you have a situation where they control the company and the founder does not, and the founder leaves, who's going to run the company? Right?
Well said.
It's a tricky situation. No, so same is true when founders have multiple founders are there. Equity has to be kind of balanced out.
Very well said. And are there any major things that the entrepreneurs should avoid at all costs when they approach investors?
I said this sounds very cliched, but I'll say it again. When you are pitching to an investor, talk about your product and your company, basically, what you're trying to do. I mean, some people simply skirt the thing and simply come down, I need money. Sure, we understand you're here, you do need money, but that is the thing is, win over the investor with the idea and then talk about, let the investor ask the questions, how much are you looking to raise?
Yeah.
Rather than you putting it out there that I'm looking to raise this much. I still feel that it's a no. And again, cliched answer, but a lot of times, a lot of people are married to their idea or company. And if somebody says something which might be perceived as negative, it hurts,
Yeah.
The idea is don't take it as negative, just take it as constructive feedback. Somebody, there are so many deals I have personally passed over and then say, oh, maybe I should have. But that's the way it is, feedback. Take everything as constructive feedback. Don't take it as negative. This guy's out here to tear my idea, destroy my company, and do this. Because especially people who do this for a living, they look at 1,000 things in a day. So they're very quick with their judgment also. Somebody begins, I'm doing this, and then tuck comes, oh, four other people are also doing this. And, it hurt, but you have to learn to kind of survive. You have to hone your pitch, your idea, which is why people say, you should have, depending on who you're meeting and how much time you have, your elevator pitch should be, 30-second pitch should be there, 1-minute pitch, 5-minute pitch. You should know where to say what and how quickly to grab somebody's attention.
Sure. I think it's about human skills, right?
Eventually, yes, like they say, if a CEO can't sell it to the investor, then they're not going to be able to sell it to anybody else also. It is, and if you look at all said and done, a lot of great founders are also very personable people person, so to speak. You can look at VSS for that. Colorful personalities. People kind of know the guy. This is the founder of the company. Those are tags that you identify with.
Yeah. Excellent. Now, just a follow-on to that is, angel investors, including yourselves, get multiple emails every day, tens of emails every day that founders are looking for funding. So how do you really deal with that? And how can a startup stand out when they approach you as an investor? You just spoke about your pitch. Now, any specific actionable tip on what is it that they can do to grab your attention and immediate attention if they want?
So this is really hard, Vineet. You're right. A lot of email comes in, and what happens is it's like everything else. You kind of glance in it and you build your own a 5-second filter, dekhna nahi, or you glance at the presentation. And this is not correct, but that's the nature of the thing. All I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
I'm not saying what I do or not do is correct, not correct, but it's the amount of time you have in a day, and that's the way it is. And this happens on email, happens on LinkedIn. People reach out to you, and again, everybody feels their idea is great, their vision is great, they want to do something. One is obviously if it comes from a referral, somebody I know. Let's say I know you and you tell me, oh, look at this.
Yeah.
Or I'm just saying again, last week you had Bhavesh over, and now Bhavesh tells me, Munish, look at this. I will at least do a deeper dive as compared to a cursory glance. I will look at it, open it. I don't want to is a separate issue, or I do want to, but at least I will look at it. So that also helps, maybe using the network to see who knows who, and then kind of reaching out through that channel, and also, again, maybe jumping a little off track, back to your previous question as well. A lot of times I also get this impression, founders should be clear. A lot of them now are also there in the market. They're not looking to raise funds to begin with. They're simply looking for mentoring. Yeah. So that ask needs to be put out very clearly, that what is it that you're looking for also. Because a lot of times people say, oh, funding, no, I don't want to fund. But they might find something interesting, might be open to mentoring. The funding might come in later as an offshoot of the mentoring. So that also needs to be very clearly communicated. But in my case, again, a referral definitely would help. Maybe I would give it a second glance to kind of look at it and do a deeper dive.
Sure. So going through your first connections is the key, right?
It does work like that. I know a couple of, I'll take an example. I'm not going to name names, but when you did Can Enable, last year, and a founder kind of, I met him at a couple of events, reached out. By sheer persistence, he got through to me. But when I tried to kind of, and it kind of resonated with me that, without being too overtly pushy, there is this line that he in my case, he walked that line correctly.
Yeah.
He eventually kind of got through where, we got in touch and we started talking, and then he, now we're in regular touch, as in speaking. Anything that he needs or anything that I feel might be of value for him, I kind of pass it on to him.
Excellent. Now, startup funding seems quite magical on the outside, but it's a tough process. Let's admit it. There are so many jargons, there's so many buzzwords around it. And it's kind of funky, right? Times people just try to flaunt it as much as they can. But it is a tough thing for sure, because we know the selection percentages. How many people actually get funds in their bank accounts, even after going through so many rounds of discussions, due diligence, and so on and so forth? Now, how can a startup really understand if they require external funding in the first place? You said that you had a mention of the demarcation. If you're looking out for mentorship, just be clear about it. Now, how should a startup know that they really need that external funding in the first place and whether they are ready for it?
Mhm. So a lot of it is again domain specific. I keep coming back to that because each industry is a little different. But the general answer is, let's say a startup is building something. My general perception would be, if you're a first time entrepreneur founder, you at least need to kind of get this to MVP stage. Build a minimal viable product, which it's not a question of traction, but it's kind of building some kind of users onboarding people, onboarding people, you whatever you like to call it. But a minimal viable product should be there for you to kind of build upon. If you are a very successful entrepreneur, sure, you can raise money at idea stage as well. Simply go to somebody and say, I'm thinking about this, and because you've been there, done that, the checkbooks will come out. Raising money, truly, you're right, is really hard. uh, it sounds really magical and all this, but it's just complete opposite of that. It's a very brutal kind of process. And maybe I'll just take a minute to explain, like, how networks kind of work. So as a network goes, it's not my personal choice only. As a network, for example, you go to Network X, you come to Can, maybe, 10 people might say, yes, I'm interested. But after 2-3 months of back and forth discussions, one person might finally say, I'm going to cut the check. Initially, the founder, when he hears 10 names and takes a simple thing, okay, if they put in 5 lakhs, I'm asking for a minimum of 5 lakhs per investor. Founder will be very enthusiastic that I'm going to, I've got 50, but unfortunately, that 50 is going to be more like 5 at the end of it. And, you go through that whole rigmarole of diligence, ye dikhao, wo dikhao, books are not in order. But that's the process, which is why I keep telling founders now only that a lot of process is now, a lot of things are streamlined in India. So all your taxes, this, that, it is better to do this from day one only and do it correctly. Rather than go later and say, somebody's running through everything, fault. This becomes a deterrent only. And this actually delays the funding. So you are much better off if you kind of keep things in check from day one itself. This is where they say, na, everybody looks at that glory kind of thing, but this is your normal day-to-day stuff that really helps. Take any athlete's example. Nobody looks at when they get to the Olympics, nobody looks at 4 years of blood, sweat, and tears. That 1 minute when they cross the finishing line, they've done it. But it's that process, right? It's process. Everything is process. If you've got everything sorted out, basic process is there. All this helps basically, because that means you're ready and you are. I still feel funding in great cases can happen in, let's say, 3 months, and in normal cases easily goes to 6 to 9 months, and in bad cases might go for a year also.
Sure.
Where you are raising amount X and part of it has been raised in 3 months, and the next part comes in after 6 months. And then also, a lot of times what happens is investors are also normal people. They might say yes today, 3 months later. I mean, again, hypothetical example, but let's say somebody said yes to you in March, and boom, this COVID situation comes in and their business gets hit. And when you go back to them in April and say money, he says, boss, there is no money. Now you can't take the guy to court. This is something you have to deal with and move on. So even if you're raising, you should be raising for at least 18 months. Your runway should be always that much in worst of cases. But money raising definitely is a hard process and something that has to be done diligently. And it's like, almost a full-time job on the side. So which is why good to have multiple founders so that somebody can focus on the business and the idea, while one founder kind of works on this.
Very well summed up. Now, what's the deal with NDAs? there are many founders who would come to angel investors and say that I'm reluctant to share my idea because I feel you could steal my idea. Now, unless you sign an NDA with me, I'm not going ahead. What's the deal with that? And how do you tackle such scenarios?
I'm going to take my personal example. I find it a little awkward also, but I might, if it gives them comfort. But the thing is, yeah, if I'm going to steal your idea and do it, then I'm not an investor anymore. Nah. I am now, that means I have to have your passion, your vision towards that idea, and I have to push through. I mean, it's not like you have an idea and I'm going to, your idea might be, I've got a vaccine for Corona. Signing an NDA is not going to help me much. I have zero knowledge in biology, pharmacy, or whatever, like I keep saying, a lot of times, great ideas come out of problems. People who have experienced problems or first hand, somebody's got old parents at home and facing issues, might strike him, well, let's do an old age. I'm just saying hypothetically, it's a real situation, real use case, and it comes out of that. A lot of times people start off, but they pivot when they realize, okay, this is not working. Personally, I'm not much of an NDA guy. I run an IT services business. Honestly, I'm signing NDAs right, left, and center because everybody says no, my idea. But which is what I go and tell my own clients personally. Look, boss, either I can make stuff for other people, which is my business, or I can make this myself, which is not my business. So I'm going to focus on my business, so to speak. But if the founders have really come up with something ground-shattering or earth-breaking, sure, if it gives them. But enforcing it is going to be hard in this country.
Excellent. And what kind of timelines do you look at from the identification of an idea which is worth investing into to finally a check being signed? Because it has to do with the runway that you should be prepared with. You cannot really be a last-minute guy approaching the investors when you have no money left in your bank. So I just want to...
Yes, you're absolutely right. That last minute is going to lead to a crisis and a desperation kind of situation, which is again to lead back to your first question of equity sharing. If you're desperate, you're going to end up giving up more. Then you become desperate. Yeah, ye bhi kar dete hain, wo bhi kar dete hain. That's not a correct approach, basically. Right. So the runway question I mentioned, ideally you should, in your head, at least plan for 18 months. Right, take in all your revenue projections, whatever, but still, in worst case, you should be. See, this is what is happening now under the COVID situation. A lot of startups are doing a quick evaluation, right? And this is how it's been summed up. There are some which have no money left, right? And they're stuck right now. There are some who have 6 months runway, some who have 9, and the great ones all have 18 to 24 months whatever. And in a situation like this, they are basically cost cutting now and figuring out where they can make reduce cost to make ends meet. So ideally, it should be 18 months.
All right, excellent. So I've got many of my more questions, but I'm going to pick some of the questions from the audience. So Sonali has a question that what kind of financials should an angel consider?
What kind of financials does an angel consider?
Would an angel consider? So you as an angel would be satisfied with what's your financial?
Let me answer. So as an angel, most of the deals, what happens are as part of networks. So the networks generally hire consultants or experts to kind of do basic due diligence for them. When it comes to, there could be a chartered accountant lawyer who will look at the numbers and the documents that you share. Now, the thing is, which is why I keep saying team is my number one, because if you're showing me an Excel and you're an Excel guru, you can show me anything I want to see, basically. I can sit here and show you my portfolio has grown by 1000x in 5 years, but that's just an Excel projection, which is why founders are the key. But numbers, yes, every network would have people who would do due diligence. There would be CAs, accountants, lawyers who would come in and check all the paperwork, your registrations, everything. So, which is why I said if you have got all of this sorted from day one, you are okay. But yes, they will look at numbers. What is it? Are you filing your taxes correctly? What are your current revenues, balance sheets? Is everything legit? There are no issues. Those kind of basic things will all be checked.
Yeah. I think, just to clarify here, I think what Sonali meant was, what's the level of traction that angel
So
investors
sorry,
are.
my bad. My apologies. So in terms of traction, this is domain driven. So if it's like a e-commerce kind of domain, obviously numbers are very, very important. But if you're doing a SaaS kind of B2B play, then we understand SaaS sales cycles are extremely long, can take you 6 to 9 months simply to. Then if you are doing a SaaS B2B play, if you even had two potential kind of clients who are evaluating your idea and who have started basic implementation, I would definitely look at it. But if it's an e-commerce play, it's a whole separate kind of number game. Obviously, like everybody loves to see a hockey stick kind of growth. This is where our numbers have gone. But this is really domain specific. What kind of industry are you coming from? And again, if you're coming from, like I said, the vaccine or a pharma kind of approach, then none of this matters because it is all subject to the fact that once you build your vaccine and it goes out to market,
Yeah.
So it's very different. Each domain and sector would have different kind of benchmarks and yardsticks to look at.
Sure, sure. Now, an excellent question from Mr. Anish asking, just a moment, as people are typing, I think I lost that one. Yeah, so here I go again. Yeah. What's the best approach to raise capital from angels? Do angels look for growth or profitability? So is it scalability that you want to look at or profitability?
At angel stage, I would look for scalability, long-term potential basis. Sometimes you're lucky, you might end up doing that, but obviously you're in it for the long haul. So again, these three stages are a little intermixed nowadays because it's become a very selective kind of. In the good old days, angel covered everything. You have pre-stage now, pre-seed, seed plus angel. So I've at this stage only I've personally seen four such separate kind of stages, and I've done all. At least till angel, I've done all. Series A and B is not my kind of thing. But it's different, but definitely growth. At early stage, it's all about growth because if I'm looking at it, is simply from a selfish, money-minded view. All I'm looking for is a multiple. Multiple means that is your growth. Multiple means my multiple. If I put in X amount, and I will get back 10x. So yes, growth is it.
Excellent. In fact, just a follow on to this would be a question from Casey. I believe that's Karan, if I'm not wrong. He's asking, is today's investor mindset capitalist? The question is today's investor mindset socialist or capitalist?
I cannot speak for others. I would say I have a mix of both. I have a mix for both now. I have some which I would say, okay, those are socialist. I understand. In fact, my very, very first investment, I would say, was investment to the arts. So to speak, I'd invested in a radio channel kind of startup which did everything non-Bollywood.
Wow.
And genuinely from the heart that it went, what the hell, do this. It's for me, it's a mix of both. Obviously, I wish I don't have that kind of capital income I can throw on. So I obviously look for return as well.
Yeah.
But every now and then there are great ideas that simply need to be supported. Even in this current situation, if you look at all the VCs, investors have got together and set up that ACT fund. And again, as an example, it's a good example also about pivoting and taking advantage of the situation. One of my portfolio companies is called Noka Robotics. They had built these robots to kind of clean solar panels at an industrial scale, that build the artificial. And as soon as the COVID situation happened, and if you Google and see, they out of IIT Kharagpur have now become the pioneers in low cost ventilators. They kind of had the tech and the know-how and they had those pieces there and they simply went and realigned the jigsaw puzzle and came out ahead. In fact, they've got a grant from this act thing also. For a lot of investors, as they mature, I feel the mindset becomes a mix. Might start off as capitalist, but as you, and it's always a learning process for everybody. So as you mature more and do that, so partly becomes so, as in you want to give back also.
Sure, sure. Thank you so much. So now Gaurav's question is, would love to hear any of your examples when you got it wrong. Assuming you did wrong, when assuming you got some startup wrong very bad, and what were your learnings from this?
Oh, I've done a lot of. If you don't do wrong, you can never learn.
Yeah.
So I don't do wrong. As in, I've been burnt many times, and burning is an essential part. Being burnt is an essential part of learning. I still remember in the early days. When we started Can, there was one deal that I was pitching throughout. Maybe we have to do this. We have to do this. And it was a fantastic idea on paper, and honestly, it went horribly wrong.
Yeah.
As soon as the money kind of came in, it just went wrong, and that was a learning for me. Now what I do is, if I feel something really, makes my belly go upside down, I sleep over the idea. I never go out and say. So I was very trigger happy initially, yes. So now I keep, I ponder over it. I spend more time thinking, I just mull over the idea, spend a couple of days. So I take my sweet time now. So if it's meant to be, it's meant to be. If it's not meant to be, it's not meant to be. But I have to kind of come back convinced that this is something that fits in with my investment thesis, fits in with, my, what I look for in a startup, basically. So learning is very important. Lots of times it's also happened out of my portfolio. One fine day you reach out to the founder and what's happening, and he says, "Oh, nothing much. Didn't you know the company shut down 2 months back?" And you have to say, "Oh, thank you for telling me. Glad you remembered. I was also there." It happens. That's part of learning. It's just happened recently also. Yeah. The guys just kind of came in. What Vineet was saying, they had no runway left, and 4 weeks before they said nothing left. And after a month, they said, "Okay, Tata, bye. Now let's talk about liquidating this." So you can't judge everything initially. I keep saying it is all team dependent. And then at the end, I personally have never felt bad where I've invested in great teams and they've failed. But, and I say this with a lot of conviction and pride. Locally also invested in a startup, didn't work out, but I've been friends with the founder. They've become great friends, basically. And I would go back and invest in those guys any day when they come back. Sometimes it doesn't work out, it's fine. It's not a personal fault. You can tell, but, it's just not meant to be. There is bound to be success and there's bound to be failure.
Sounds good. That was really candid. Now, Anish and Kuldeep had similar questions, which is about the sectors and the themes or the ideas that are going to attract the angel investors going forward. Given the circumstances of COVID, what are some of the sectors and ideas and themes that you would want to look at as an angel investor?
No, it's not me, but the sectors are not going to be rocket science. This is the easiest question. Obviously, cloud infrastructure is going to really boom off. People innovating anywhere on those ideas are going to take off. EdTech is obviously already booming, especially virtual EdTech. All of a sudden you see a spurt in deal flow. Gaming was always hot, but with the COVID situation, gaming has really kind of taken off. Everybody is kind of looking at gaming options. Again, virtual telemedicine. So all of this has been kind of pushed forward. Like I was saying, AirMeet, virtual conferencing, now people obviously, like Vineet said, I'm also president for TiE Chandigarh, and we do this flagship event called TiECon. And now the first virtual TiECon is going to happen in Silicon Valley, and everybody is looking for a solution that gives you feel, that conference kind of 2-day kind of feel. How do you manage that? So these are sectors which are rapid. And I also see this on the flip side while running an IT services business. A lot of times we get these things, we need to develop this very quickly. This is what we're looking at. So these are obviously 4 or 5 sectors which are really bound to shoot up.
Excellent. And just to follow on to this one from Ankit Rathor, who happens to be a cohort member in our virtual accelerator program, ICANN. He is willing to get your outlook on agri ideas. He is not being specific here what kind of agri is he speaking about, but generally about the agri ideas.
Ankit, I'm not the agri expert and I'm personally not invested in any, but I feel this is a great sector, especially for Punjab. In fact, at Tycon, we had a complete, the Punjab government also mentioned very clearly they will launch an incubator for agri startups in Chandigarh itself. It's just that the situation because of COVID kind of got impacted. But I personally feel very strongly that in Punjab, the next wave, we should be focusing on agri-tech. And this is, as the sector goes, is now really starting to take off. There will be lots of, and India is an agrarian economy to begin with. There is no doing, and we can definitely benefit. Israel's been doing fantastic stuff in this domain. Australia does, and there are lots of markets we can service also. But again, from a startup perspective, this is one of those things we can start in India and then go global also. So again, agri, yes, has potential, immense potential. What we see right now in agri also is a lot of it is still solving logistical problems, demand supply issues. And in a country like India, logistics is always going to matter. But even innovation in agri is really going to help. And we have everything here. We have NIPER, we have the PAU, lots of things. Everything I feel what you need at least to get off the ground is all there.
Sure. Excellent. Now that we are speaking of sectors, Abhishek has a question about deep tech and biotech. Based on AI screening and monitoring, it takes almost 3 to 5 years to get any breakthrough outcome or anything substantial that you see on the ground. So how do you look at that as
it takes 3 to 5 years to get anything off the ground, basically in AI ML.
Yeah. In deep tech and biotech, basically.
So they're separate. So I'm not sure biotech. So I've done a couple of, deep, bio kind of investments. My learning there has been these are very heavy investment games. These are not where an angel fund simply gives some money and you're good to go. You raise $1 million and you're okay. This is pure R&D innovation, and you have to keep kind of getting to the stage where you actually take your innovation to market, basically, right? And you need lots of grants. In fact, one of my portfolio companies folded because they got to that stage where they were innovating, but they simply ran out of money, and none of the existing angels had those kind of deep pockets to kind of invest further to take them to that stage, right? So biotech, you're absolutely right, needs a lot of money, and it's a long gestation cycle. So probably look for specialized. I do hear the folks out of Switzerland, the HNIs are great investors in the biotech domain. They are the ones who understand it and understand the long gestation cycles. In AI ML, I'm not sure. I do see a lot of innovation happening quickly. Also, it's not 3 to 5 years is a long time. Either you're doing something very cutting edge, which I'm personally not aware about, but basic companies nowadays get off the ground so a lot of them also take stuff like low hanging fruit. They build the tech, the model. So somebody says, I'll do fraud detection and I'll do, risk detection, those kind of things. So then it becomes more of a finding, like I said, finding the client, leveraging their data to kind of build your model and taking it further. So it really depends on what kind of sectoral thing are you focusing, or what is it that you're building.
Right. Sounds good. Now, Munish has a question. He's asking how much ideally we should look at for, I think what he meant was traction at seed stage if POC and idea has been validated and pre-revenue stage. I think this has been answered already. This has already been answered. So we'll skip to the next one.
How much ideally should we look at stage if POC and idea has been validated and pre-revenue stage?
Yeah, but what?
Anish, just one quick question. Never think of it as Tri-City NCR region. Whatever you're doing is pan-India, right? If you have to go to Bangalore also to raise, that's the way it is. But if you built your POC and the idea has been validated, and you have customers, then yes, then it boils down to negotiation. Depends on what you're looking at raising also. I'm saying very high level numbers. Don't hold me to this, but just the benchmark, what I've seen over years, seed stage generally is 10-15% dilution, 10 to 15. At Angel, I have seen anywhere from 18 to 27 kind of dilution happening, right? So, and then it keeps going on. But what happens is, as soon as you get to Series A, Series B, and if it is Series a big VC fund is coming in, they will not dilute the founder anymore. They will then ask the seed and angel investors to sell. That becomes like a prerequisite. At least 50% has to be sold or 100% has to be, and which is how seed and seed and angel investors make their money. They get their multiple there and exit. So that's how that cap table is also managed overall. So the founder, everybody's intent at the end is founder dilution has to be minimum until obviously you are Flipkart size and you have 6% of multi-billion-dollar company. Then it makes no difference. You have enough money to lose as it is.
Yep, excellent. Now, Anish has another question, and he's seeking the recommendation.
I'm just sorry. I'm also sorry, Vineet. I'm just reading. So
yeah.
I'm just going back to the previous question. The guy said he was referring to deep tech and biotech. So if you're referring to deep tech and biotech, then yes, I absolutely agree. You are looking at 3 to 5 years, and you need to look for specialized funds for raising that kind of money. Because in fact, even 3 to 5 years might be less. I forget the company's name. I have one in my report. They're working on this liver transplants, basically, right? And I do now realize it's a very heavy capital intensive kind of game, which is why I say normal angels will not fit with it.
Yep. Excellent. So one question from Manit. He says, if you have two decks on the table, one for online learning and another for offline learning, which one will you prefer first without looking at the deck? Offline or
online
education?
Online.
Okay.
I am now speaking in today's day and time.
Yeah.
If that question put to me in March, maybe in beginning of January, my answer might be different. But today, online.
Excellent. One of the questions that we got through the form that one of the participants filled was that, as a lot of jobs have gone due to COVID, and when things improve, can someone like us, who is automating candidate assessment and recruitment, be benefited? Somebody who is in the HR tech domain. Now, all those jobs which are gone are gone. When they are recruited again, and these people are recruited again, can somebody in HR tech domain be benefited?
Yeah, HR tech should still continue also because the demand is not going to go away right now also. Even in the current situation, HR tech remains important. In fact, again, as an IT services company, we've seen a lot of inflow from startups who are pitching their ideas to us. Maybe this service is of value to you, and you should be leveraging this and automate. So a lot of automation is happening in the whole game, basically. So we see a lot of still inward requests for HR tech, at least on the services side of it.
Sure. Excellent. Now, one more is somebody who is not able to secure even 5 lakhs to develop the minimum viable product. Because he says that nobody is keen in application-based service startups. Do you have anything as a suggestion for this guy?
Yeah. So everything does not have to be funding, right? This has become a misnomer now, and everybody wants money. So let me take. I run a very normal IT services business, and I've never taken a loan from anybody. Why can't you just bootstrap your own business? Everything does not have to. See, a lot of times you have to realize one thing: everything is not built for scale. And for scale, you obviously, yes, for scale you need capital. There is no denying. You get to a basic stage, you need capital to grow, which is fine. But at the end, if you are not getting, but your idea is strong and whatever you're doing is correct, why not run? I mean, there are lots of ET gives an award every year for the best bootstrap company, and they're doing phenomenally well. It's not like they are small they run great businesses which are bootstrapped. So why not look at running normal bootstrap businesses? In fact, if I were to ever get deals where somebody has been bootstrapping their business for 5 years and run a profitable business, it's any day better to look at from an investor viewpoint, because you're going to get a great return.
Yeah. Excellent. Abhishek has another question. He's asking, since valuations always create a friction, why aren't convertible notes or convertible debts preferred for most of the seed and angel investments?
So, Abhishek, in the US, it's pretty much now almost like a de facto norm. You must have seen Y Combinator, 500 startups. They all have their versions of CCDs, their safe notes, so to speak. Y Combinator has safe, 500 startups has KISS, whatever they call it, right? And initially in India, CCD was more like a bridge kind of thing. If you're going from angel to Series A and you are at high growth, but in order to get a better valuation, you might do a bridge round, raise money, and get to certain metrics, and then raise money. But nowadays, I've seen, at least in certain cases, CCDs are making a comeback. As in a lot of cases, let's say I personally feel I'm not equipped alone as a person to kind of do company valuation, so to speak. So if I'm just doing something alone and it's a small ticket kind of round, I might say, okay, let's do a CCD. Let the other guy come in, figure out what the valuation is. We'll deal with it then. I'll work on the discounts. Only thing was, initially here CCDs were very abused, because in the good old days, you would hear about 50% discount, 60% discount.
Yeah.
Point is, at those kind of discounts, no other investor will ever invest in your company. Because who's going to want to come in at a later round and then say, Acha, the initial person is now getting a 50% discount. So CCDs have to, reasonable limits are 10, 15, 20%, and then they convert at a certain kind of predefined value. I feel there has to be a change in Indian mindset also gradually. We are still, we feel equity is equity. Point is, if the startup holds equity, debt, it's all the same. It's gone.
Tangible.
So CCD adoption.
Yeah, equity looks more tangible.
Very early stage, he's right. His question is right. They help reduce friction.
Yeah.
Because you are not going to argue at that point what is the value of the company. You're going to focus on the company instead.
Yeah. Now, Mohit has asked his question again. Sorry, Mohit, we had to post it twice. He's asking what's your outlook towards prop tech industry. By prop
Is
tech,
that property?
I think, yeah, that is what he meant. Property tech.
So I stay away with I have not ever looked at, done, even if it comes, it's not my domain expertise. But unfortunately, again, I'm just speaking as a normal person. Given the current situation, obviously property or literally infrastructure are not great. But what is happening is, what I do see is there are innovations happening. I won't call this as prop tech per se, but let's say people are now building marketplaces for skilled labor.
Yeah.
This is a derivative of prop tech. It's not prop tech per se, but that is something which is very interesting, because now there is demand for such kind of skilled labor. Even if it be at carpenters, masons, those kind of people were very hard to get. But now, if there are systems in place where you can do that, then those are more service oriented. But that's something I still might look at.
Sure. Given you have limited time and you have to hop on to your next meeting, I take one or two more questions. So Nitin Sharma has asked, what are your inputs on trucking going completely online? Trucking going completely online. Social welfare.
Trucking.
Yeah. With the social welfare of the people involved, beginning from joining to the
retirement. I do have a couple of portfolio companies which kind of are logistic based on trucking, but I still am not very clear on the question when you say going completely, as in the whole process going online. There are lots of startups already doing that
Yeah.
for sure. In terms of trucking being handled, there's a startup which also does where each trucker drives for 8 hours, gets off at a particular point, and the other one takes it from there, so that they can be home with their families rather than doing 24-hour journeys.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of platforms and systems which kind of help automate and do this process to a large extent, if that's the question.
Sure. I'll go with my last question for now, which is what we got offline. Somebody asked, what's your
There we go. Yeah.
outlook? What's your outlook on incubators and accelerator programs? And when does a startup know, or does a founder know it is the stage to apply for one?
There is no. So I feel. So again, there are lots of accelerators and incubators out there now. Unfortunately, they're good and bad both, which is true in every business. Now, if you end up with the correct one that kind of fits in and they are there for that purpose of making sure you grow, then definitely by all means, you have to understand a lot of founders, especially the younger ones. Now, there's a lot of things that we don't know. I mean, when I started my business, there's a lot of stuff that I simply learned by hit and trial. I would go wrong, understand, and then improvise and do that again. But this is where these incubators and accelerators with the correct mentoring can give you value, basically. They can help you, they can introduce you to networks. I don't say this, but in the US also you have so many. But the best example that I read of, and I quote this very often, is they're not an accelerator but an investment firm like Andreessen Horowitz. It's a big firm, everybody knows of it. Now, the beauty of their process is that as soon as they kind of cut the check, they invite all the founders over. And then they ask them, okay, you know what? Give us a list of 10 of your potential clients that you want to sell your service to. And this is where their network and access to network comes in, is that then they start doing all this. They open doors, you go there. And this is what I feel an accelerator and incubator here can add value is. One, obviously, in the literal terms of how to run a business. Then is opening avenues for you, introducing you to the correct people. That really brings in lots of value. If you're part of CAN, for example, again, there are 35 investors behind. And now you reach to Vineet and say, I'm looking for a connect in XYZ company. Now, and let's say it's in the local ecosystem. Now, out of those 35, I'm very sure somebody would have something somewhere. That door can be opened. So that is where the value add comes in. But you must know what to ask for and when to ask for. Sometimes, if you are unsure about your own business, some accelerators I've heard take equity. There are different plans, equity link. At the end, it's a call that you have to take. You should be talking to other people who've been part of that program offline to get feedback. It's like applying and saying, oh, I want to go to any college for that matter. You do your homework, due diligence, and then choose. So it's the same kind of thing. You need to make sure that you have done your homework and you evaluate correctly. But they do have their value in their ecosystem. There is no denying that fact, and which is why they're there. The idea is it becomes a win-win situation for all parties.
Yeah. Sounds good. Thank you so much for sparing your time for this startup masterclass. I'm sure the questions are never going to end, but my sincere thanks to all the participants who joined us today. Guys, stay tuned in. I've also left a link for you to access our previous masterclasses. Be in touch, and we can add you to our inner circle soon, so you get the updates of our future masterclasses. Thank you so much, everybody, and thank you so much, Lisa, for sparing your time.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thanks, Vineet.
Thank you so much.